Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room Live. I'm Travis Bruce. By the way, I would like to thank all my subscribers. And if this is your first time watching, please hit that like and that subscribe button. Now, today I have a special guest with us. She is a horror author, and now she's a big fan of the topic that we're going to talk about. Today I have Kim Ann Schultz. Kim Ann, welcome to the Horror Room Live.
Thank you for having me, Travis. This is going to be so much fun.
Yes, yes. And listen, so let me tell you how this all started. So I had Kim Ann on for an interview, and like for the last year, I've been talking about X Pearl, and like every one on my interview, and so many people are like, what are you talking about?" And I've had so many people watch it and say, "Thank you for recommending that. It's amazing." And Kim Ann was one of them. So
Yep.
Kim Ann, you watch Pearl, and what did you think?
Yeah, so I am continuously consuming horror content. I often say I've got a TV in my kitchen and I stream it all the time. So I'm seeing a lot of stuff, and I've also been largely disappointed, kind of unimpressed with a lot of stuff. Then we had that conversation, and you mentioned Pearl and Pearl mostly. So I did happen to see that one first. And I'm like, oh my gosh, here is a horror film that I can really wrap my head around. I want to dig into this. I want to see it again. And here we are getting to talk about it. And since my background is art history, and I'm kind of a history person anyway, it pulls in things from the past and wanting to learn a little bit more about all of the bits and pieces that come together and get pulled forward in time to make the movie what it is. So it's been a really fun thing to even prepare for this talk tonight.
Yes. I mean, and these are amazing movies. I mean, Ty West, the director, is released by A24. It's probably the two best indie horror movies released in the last 2 years. And I've seen some good ones, but these movies are amazing. And I don't know why, but it just flew under the radar.
Certainly the most story driven. I mean, Pearl itself stands alone just fine. I would say X maybe a little bit less so. But so many films these days are extravaganzas of gore, special effects, and you get your instantly iconic main character, your monster of the movie, and then there's little else. But here you actually have to sit through a little bit and also just enjoy the story and start to understand and put these characters together. And that's what's really fun. And that is, I think, also what ties it back to some of the film classics that we either grew up with or that might even predate us a little bit.
I agree. And I think so. What do you think about how Ty West released the movies? He released X first, and then he released Pearl, the prequel, right
Mhm.
shortly afterwards.
Yeah, it's funny. So one of the things that if I'm surfing and conversing or whatever are paying attention to comments, and the comments on X have not been as into the film as Pearl has, and I think because ultimately we know this third movie's coming out, and I think ultimately X might end up serving as largely a bridge film to the third film. Also because it's a little bit slower burn. It's funny, he uses, horror is supposed to make us uncomfortable. That's the point, right? It's
Exactly.
supposed to scare us. It's supposed to maybe creep us out, maybe gross us out. And so that's the fun challenge of watching horror. Well, one of the methods that he uses in X is he is incorporating porn into it to challenge us to watch it and kind of, okay, guys, can you incorporate the porn watching into your horror watching?
Yes.
And how are you doing with that? And a lot of horror fans, it's like, give me the gore, give me the kill, but then, oh, okay, hold on a second, we've got a little bit of sexy porn going on.
Hmm.
And the funny thing is because he's in that retro phase, kind of that 70s vibe, it brings to mind the movie Boogie Nights. And
100%.
Boogie Nights did a really good job of sort of humanizing the people involved in that industry. And also, their humanity. And of course, the most humane thing we've got going on in X is the bond that this group of friends has with each other, and the loyalty even that the couples within each in the group have for each other. So that becomes like the quaint thing. So it's like, okay, so watch the sex act, watch it being filmed, but then appreciate the friendship and the bonds they have, and then contrast that with the very special bond that the old man and his old wife have. Because like, you were saying a little bit ago in prep, that their bond is so intertwined and they're so dependent on each other to an extreme degree. But there you've got two families and they come together, and then that's where the horror happens, is right in between that.
Right. Because so I want to jump into X. Now, X probably had for me one of the most, unlikable characters, and that was Jenna Ortega's character. And she was the girlfriend that was with the camera guy, and
Mhm.
he steps outside and she winds up in the porno.
Yeah. Well, and she's called Church Mouse. That's her nickname. It's like
Yes.
rightly so. She was so vulnerable and so young. And it's like, yeah, it definitely a victim on every level, a little girl that got pulled in. And I think that even towards the end there, she is furious with Maxine, and she's furious with her. And she says something about being pulled in. So it's almost like the one girl pulled her in with some promises, just as what we witnessed in the movie Pearl.
And I kind of wonder, because I kind of wonder, like, well, I don't wonder. I think at a young age, it's easy if you're in a certain environment or around a certain element. It's easy for you to fall into that and get pulled in.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And if there's hardship and you're escaping the hardship and you're just testing your wings in the world, that's, first of all, just testing your wings in the world. I mean, that's a natural progression of curiosity and wanting to grow up and to see what you can handle. But certainly if you're coming out of adversity, that would be important. And I think one really cool thing to understand is reading a little bit about Mia Goth's background. She came from a pretty difficult childhood. There was a lot of travel, a lot of mixing and matching of family members to participate in as a family member and as a child. So I think that she grew up with some adversity, and I think she is parlaying that wonderfully into the craft of the roles that she's taking on and her involvement in these films, and most especially Pearl.
Yeah, I don't know how she did not, especially for Pearl, how she did not win an Academy Award. And I, it's just a amazing job. I didn't see any of the actresses who were nominated for Best Actress that
Mhm.
came close to what she did in that movie.
Oh, and well, so the scene where she is spilling her guts to her friend, the sister-in-law, is amazing. And the emotion that she's pulling out and the way that she's relaying it. I mean, that is a powerful scene also. And her friend, who becomes almost like this Bo Peep character, the sister-in-law, in that's a monumental scene. And then I think at the very end, when the credits are rolling and she is holding that smile and she is breaking apart, yet holding herself together while the words are just coming up. And I hope that streaming services do not cut the credits off, as they often do, because that is an amazing little bit of acting that we saw there. So I want to mention too, I was reading, it was a Rolling Stone critic, and he said, yeah, her performance was great for a genre actress. Well, I'm like, well, horror is a genre, just as rom-coms are a genre, just as action films are a genre. And it's
Exactly.
just like every film is. And so I think it's a little peculiar, considering the venerable history that horror has and the place that it has, especially now, because it's absolutely going gangbusters, is let's not call it a genre thing and then sideline it as a result of it, because I totally agree with you. Mia's performance was amazing in the subtle moments and in the moments when it was even just her, and you saw so much flashing through her face as she was is just holding that smile and crying and hurting. You could see the pain. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
And I mean, like I could sit back and you watch a character in Pearl, and like you can imagine, as a young girl, I believe she was like late teens, and she has this overbearing mother. She has to take care of her sickly father. She's married young and has a husband that she hasn't heard from and went to the war that died. And like she is seeking acceptance. She is seeking acceptance from someone, anyone, whether it be career wise or other men.
Anything at all, grasping at straws. So that ties into an observation I made, because I really got into the visuals of the film because I think it's crafted beautifully.
It is.
In the movie Pearl, the way that they film the farmhouse and the garden, everything, it's as if it were a set. And they do it from a low angle where it's almost like it could be at the edge of the world. And of course, that ties into the isolation they felt and the Spanish flu, the isolation that brought with it. And then in the movie X, it's filmed at a little different angle. So you see the surrounding countryside, and you see that it's not on a on a cliffside or anything. It's just on a little knoll, and it's part of a bigger countryside. And so the isolation and the loneliness, and the fact that they were filming during COVID, and the strange things that people endured when the Spanish flu was rampant, equal to what we all endured a few years ago in terms of isolation. It's a really great commentary without really saying a single word on what that does.
I agree. It also talks about. I mean, it also brings up the what is beauty in the eyes of
Yes.
society.
Yes.
And in the eyes of society, Mia Goth's Pearl's character is not beautiful. She's plain Jane. I think they even said that in the movie. And
Mhm.
you know, beauty in our society is blonde hair, blue eyes, big boobs, and like
Yep.
so it even brings that up as well. That like if you
Yes.
look at Hollywood, some of the actresses out there are not great actresses. They just have a look.
Absolutely. Yes, that role filling. During the tryouts, the one person says, "You're not what we're looking for." And that is often the case when people are trying out. They can do the best thing they've ever done. But if they don't fulfill the vision that's already pre-existing, it's not going to land it for them. And I thought it was interesting how I think Mitzi was her name, the sister-in-law,
Yes.
how she transformed just little by little visually as Pearl went on into this caricature of, like, almost a Bo Peep frozen princess. That last
Yes.
scene
Uh-huh.
where they're sitting together, and her little ringlets and the blue that she's wearing, and she is the absolute quintessential Bo Peep fairy princess character, and that leaves Mia's character as the dark, not that. And I
Yes.
thought that was a really cool visual also.
And something else it brings up is to having a sick parent. A
Yes.
sick parent puts a lot of strain can put a lot of strain on a child having to take care of a sick parent. And
Yes.
unfortunately, I had to do that, and like so it was a lot of stress, there's a lot of strain, and like there's almost a release when they do pass away.
It's yes, having grown
Relief.
up and older over the years, it's been my experience also with one parent. And of course, you find yourself second guessing all the time. Am I doing the right thing? And what part of me is the kid still? What part of me is the adult tending to that person? And then hearing other people's stories, especially where the devotion ends up being something that impinges on every aspect of their life, and that is hard. And that's something that we as a society, we're still trying to figure that out. Societies over all time have handled things differently and perhaps better in some ways, but we're now very nomadic. Our continent is really big, like here in America, for instance. We travel far, we're not around each other very much. So yeah, we're contending with that a lot. And then on the other hand, being a horror film, then of course you circle right back to, you got your Lizzie Borden situation. Lizzie Borden
Mhm.
took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks, that kind of thing. And then you also go,
Yes.
you have your, what they call the subgenre psycho biddy. You know, we think of Joan Crawford and Betty Davis types, and now we have
Mhm.
the Mia Goth characters to add into that. So psycho biddy, I think, is an interesting term. I'd almost rather call it sort of like a Lizzie Borden thing, because it's like, you know, that's based on a real story anyway. That yes, because it's a horror film, then the story got to resolve itself that way. Mia did not sit down and write a book about her
Exactly.
experience and get through the trauma that way.
Because I saw Pearl in the theaters during COVID, and
Uh-huh.
I was like, "Wow, this is a beautiful movie." It's just a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
Shot, the colors, the contrast, it is cinematography wise, it is absolute a masterpiece.
It is. I uh, oftentimes when you are doing horror chat with people, there's often the question of what was your start in horror? What's the first horror film that you saw? And my stock answer has generally been that I will circle back to the earliest years. So when I was a little girl, I'm old enough that it still was a point in time when Wizard of Oz was broadcast once a year, you know, and then you would plan to
Yes.
watch it the way that we used to plan watching a television show. And so it was watched, and then later on it was owned on various forms, you know, VHS and DVDs. But at any rate, I was very little then, and I would not miss it. And I would dread the scenes because I knew what was going to happen, but I could not wait for them because they were so scary. Because Wizard of Oz, in addition to being everything else that it is, because of course it started out also as social political commentary, but you've got some of the most amazing horror tropes, one right after the other. You start out with the cyclone, then you have Dorothy's abandonment, and she's left out there with the storm bearing down on her. Then you have the Elmira Gulch woman turning into this classic wicked witch on her broom in the air. And that's scary, you know. And so when you're a little kid, even if your parents are not consciously letting you watch horror per se, that can be a horror experience. And then was anybody not ever creeped out when those legs curled up under that house, you know, and the ruby
Yeah.
slippers disappeared? And then people often love to talk about those flying monkeys. Well, I mean, it's got it all, and it's wrapped up in something like Pearl that is
Mhm.
such it has so much story to it that it becomes part of it. And also thinking about back when The Wizard of Oz first came out, can you just imagine sitting in a dark theater way back then? And that movie starts in black and white and then transforms into Technicolor. And what an experience that would have been. And the way Pearl starts is an absolute obvious homage to that, because it takes you through that dark barn and then
Yes.
it just explodes you into this beautiful Technicolor scene where all of the colors are enhanced, and that crimson red is so bright and the greens are so bright. Also, I noticed in the movie X, towards the end, when Pearl, as an old woman, is trudging through the barn, and she's spotlit, and she has that white nightgown on, and it's very bloodstained, but it's bloodstained just so her gown actually looks like it's decorated
Mhm.
intentionally. And there again, you've got that dark barn, and it's like the world is beyond, but it's now black night. It's like, this is the end. This is bad. You're not going to get let out into the sunshine at this point. So that motif, that they can thank Oz, of course, and they are thanking Oz with that. I think it's definitely something they had fun with.
Yes, most definitely. Now, Pearl's husband, I incredible guy, right? I mean, he loves that woman. He
He's
absolutely loves
devoted.
her.
Yes. Yes.
Like,
Yes.
he comes back from the war. She's done cheated on him. She's done murdered her whole family around other people. And he's like, he embraces her. He's okay with it.
Yeah. Well, you know, these days we focus so much on the mental health of veterans, and we have terms for it, right? And back in the day, it was generally just referred to as shell shock. and who knows what he witnessed and what he came home with. And so probably from a psychological standpoint, it could be pieced together by an expert who's going to understand it, is that he came back in such a frail and broken state that he sort of meshed with her damage, and then it kind of served as a bond for the two of them, and then they've continued their life that way because she was able to sort of redefine what their new normal, we say that a
Yes.
lot these days, what their new normal was going to be, and it was going to be on her terms because she was so very broken. Because again, it's a horror movie.
100%. And he also takes her back even when they're older. Like, when she wants to murder, like, he has her back. He's like,
yeah, totally.
I
He
got you.
helps her right out. And the
Yeah.
shotgun scene and the kickback of the shotgun, it's like, yeah, that's just how that works. I do want to, what, there is one thing so they got the forensics on that, okay. But when Pearl is attacking her friend who looks like Bo Peep at this point in time, that's one thing that, if you've ever observed when somebody is wielding an axe and doing it correctly, you hold it at the base of the handle because that's how you get the leverage.
Yes.
And she's got her hands just up around just beneath the head of the axe. It's like, there is no way this is going to work. You're not going to whack through this woman's spine, do this. So, that was a little bit of a thing. And of course, maybe it was also about getting everything in the shot, they had to frame it that way. But I just kind of noticed it, and I'm like, yeah, because I'm a girl, I'm like, yeah, I need the full range to really hack through this person here.
Now, what I didn't understand about Pearl was, I know you're gonna say, Travis, this is a horror movie, it's not supposed to make sense. All right. But like every person who she killed in that movie, she gave them a heads up that, hey, I'm crazy. I'm capable of killing you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they didn't exercise on the side of caution. Like even the guy who she was sleeping with, she gave him the sign instead of him saying, hey, yep, I'm heading home. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you tonight. He's like, no, you're a crazy bitch and blah, blah, blah. And he gets murdered. And I'm like, well, why would you do that?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say it's because really the entire movie, Pearl, is about Pearl not being given her time. She's not listened to. She's not taken seriously. She always falls short in some way. She's absolutely abused by her mother. I mean, no matter how stringent or strict the old world German mom is portrayed, and the love that they have, because in abuse there is and can be love, but it's just in a very damaged dynamic. But she was so abused. And it was like, that was maybe the main form of attention that she got was when her mother was raging at her. But at every other point in time, she was never really listened to, and even when she was spilling her guts to her friend also did that, which of course, is like, okay, I'm in danger. I'm not comfortable. I'm going to scoot elegantly out this door. And once again, it was like they weren't hearing her heartbreak, right? Because you're right. She did sort of witness to her self-destruction internally. She did witness it to just about everybody that she could.
Yes. Now, there is a third movie come out, which is the trilogy to wrap up the trilogy.
Yes.
Maxine with the triple X. Now, I honestly think that if this is even on the same par as X or Pearl, this might be one of the greatest horror series ever made.
Well, it certainly will kickstart it, and maybe it will help kickstart let's call it a subgenre, which would be story-driven horror,
yes.
versus stuff that's just basically solid gore horror these days, that kind of thing. So I think that would be great. I mean, the best that we can do is probably what we're doing right now, is sharing on it and posting on it and getting word out, because word of mouth still can be a solid way to get to get this out. And it sounds to me like T West is just really hitting a stride with it. And that the other thing I want to point out on that is that I think one of the reasons Pearl is so good is because it was a collaborative project between him and Mia Goth. She was completely involved in creating the story and probably a lot more. And I've got one other point I want to make on that. But you know what it reminds me of is how fabulous the Kill Bill movies are. The way that Quentin Tarantino paired up with Uma Thurman, because she was also active in the creation of the movie and the story itself, is one of the reasons it's so good, is that you've got this input of these complementary human beings that are putting their stuff together. And especially because it is the empowered women, even if it's for really bad purposes, they're empowered with their evil, they're empowered with their wicked intent. That's one of the reasons why it's just so terribly good. And the other part is that T West is an American and Mia Goth is basically British. She did live elsewhere as she was growing up, but she is a British actress. And I think it's interesting to bring those two cultures together, if you want to call it, subcultures of the English speaking language together, because I'm sure that her fascination with the very American Wizard of Oz plays into the reason why they played that movie up so terribly much. And I even, because I love many things that are connected to the British culture, couldn't get past the fact of this particular shade of crimson that she's wearing and the red dress that she's wearing when things really go south, because there's a very famous British songstress, British songwriter, a performer, and somebody who is really a living legend. And I would say, let's picture our American Stevie Nicks and then do that tenfold, and that's Kate Bush. And the reason why I say that is that Kate Bush, back in the day, did a music video with a song called Wuthering Heights. It's one of her biggest hits ever. And in that, she's wearing a long red dress with a little black belt, and she dances this freeform kind of dance on a hill. And it's actually celebrated in different countries in the world on her birthday in July. And I'm like, I just have to wonder what kind of a Kate Bush fan Mia Goth might be, where this red dress is also maybe a nod to the Wuthering Heights connection, Kate Bush connection, because of course, Wuthering Heights is also a story about toxic love. It is absolute gothic horror in its own way, with hauntings and everything. So it's got every element in it that would tie it in very nicely.
And I totally agree. Now, Kim, man, can you imagine one thing too about Pearl? Can you imagine growing up in a household in a situation that's so toxic, so bad, and you fantasize that you have this way of getting out of this situation, and that way presents itself right in front of you,
Mhm.
and you blow it out of water, and they tell you you're not good enough. You're not good enough for this, and now you're stuck in that situation for the rest of your life. Still,
That's horror. That's horror. And that's just an interesting thing. I mean, so horror I would define as extreme allegory. And that kind of allows for all extremes, whether it's visual or whether it's, the acts of violence or whatever, but it generally means something, and there's a message in it, whatever that's going to be the takeaway, at least the horror that I like that resonates most with me. And so the idea of people going through their lives and wanting to be somebody, want to be heard. I mean, gosh, that's explored from something as simple as like, look, Dr. Seuss and Horton Hears a Who, and people are these anonymous microscopic beings on a dust speck, and they're trying, we're here, we're here, we're here. And there's so many other stories and motifs in movies where you're trying to break free of your anonymity, and you're trying to be heard, and you're trying to be somebody. And what somebody is in other movies is where it takes that to its conclusion. And of course, in horror, it took it to the Lizzie Borden conclusion.
yeah. I mean, you hear stories all the day about some kid who lives in the ghetto or surrounded by gangs, and he finally gets like a scholarship to get out and go to college. And second away, he does makes up one stupid mistake and his scholarship was taken away, and now he's back in that hell.
Yes.
And like that is horror.
Deja vu all over again.
Yes.
Mhm. You bet.
All right. So, Kim Ann, so I told you about the movie. You popped it on streaming service. Tell
Yes.
me what was going through your head as you were watching it, as soon as it started.
Mhm. Well, it so happens I did watch Pearl first, and I watched X after,
Okay.
and it was I was immediately drawn in by the visuals and even the fonts that they were using. And another thing that I really loved is there's actually a score. So there's a soundtrack, that's available. You can get that, but there's actual music that accompanies the scenes and the events in the movie. And so many horror films for quite some time now have had this ubiquitous do 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 do
Mhm.
tone, and that's all the score that is ever created. There's no music that either exists to contrast what's going on or to underlie it and make it more intense. So I really appreciated the fact that there was an old school musical score, and in fact, I could have sworn when she was riding her bicycle and things were starting to go really south, and she pulls up in her bicycle at some point, and there were just a few notes that were played, and it was almost like like a Jaws doo 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 doo, just a moment of like, okay, we're going to just hit these notes because it's going to resonate with you, like here comes the big beast, as she was descending into her utter psycho madness. So yeah, and I just completely enjoyed it. And after then digging into it and reading about it, I watched it a second time. And what's really cool is I don't have a lot of patience for most movies watching them a second time. I don't often do that, but this one I didn't mind it at all.
Mhm.
And so that was like a really good sign.
And what's great too is I tell people who are even not horror fans, I'm like, you have to watch at least Pearl. You at least have to watch Pearl. Like, you don't have to be a horror fan to enjoy Pearl. It is that damn good.
Yes. Yeah, and the gore is really well done too. For people who are
Yes.
fans of it, it is just as well done. And the way that they do the mosaic on screen when she's dismembering, and you've got this
Yeah.
kaleidoscopic thing of blood, and
Mhm.
that's again, that was that a little bit Pulp Fiction-ish,
It was. It was.
right? Another little nod, and then I'm starting to think about Scarface, and then I think
Mhm.
about the Tarantino movie. Oh, which Django Unchained, right?
Django,
Where you
yes.
have fountains of blood, and it's almost like a Vegas fountain.
Yes,
And so it's like, yeah, they're having a lot of fun with this.
they were. And one thing I want to say too about Pearl, it is once again, I mean, it's such a beautiful movie, but it hits at home because everybody has been a Pearl at some point. Now,
Yes.
then they're not get to the point where they started killing people, hopefully, but everybody has been a Pearl before. Everybody has been ignored. Everybody has been mistreated. Everybody has
Yeah.
been looked past or passed on,
Or been the brunette.
or been a brunette, correct. I mean, everybody has done it, and
Yeah.
everybody has parents that that don't always cheer for you sometimes.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
well, and I want to say, and there's no comparing a real person with the character. My parents are immigrants. My dad's from Ukraine, my mom's from Germany, so they came over as young adults. So I did grow up with German, aka old world parenting, and so I can relate to the sternness and the formality as just a way of doing things, and that was actually quite correct. And the actress who played the mother is not necessarily a German speaker, but she did really good on the
yes,
German. It was very understandable.
and also it talks about too old German as well as that the mother wants her to be a wife, a stay-at-home wife, raise a
Uh-huh.
family. Pearl wants to have her own career. She
Hmm.
wants to be, an actress. She wants to be a singer. She wants to have her own
She wants to
career.
be a star.
A star, yeah,
A
and
star. Yeah.
her mother was like, "You are a wife. This is what you do. You stay home. You raise kids. You don't need a career. I didn't have a career.
Right, right. Yes, and she has so much resentment of being stuck in her situation, which she also verbalizes very clearly. And of course, she takes it out on Pearl. So then Pearl pays that forward
Yes,
like a big, big,
100%.
ugly ball of energy. And so they just, they end up feeding it to the critter in the
Yes.
pond there.
Now,
Alligator or crocodile, whichever one it is. I'm not, I guess I probably should have checked that, whether it's a crocodile or an alligator.
now I've heard a lot of women say that their mothers do that to their daughters. They put whatever issues they have or self-esteem things, they put it on their daughters because they feel
Yeah,
like
paying it forward.
yeah, their daughter is young and their daughter might have the opportunities that they don't have, and they get kind of jealous of their own daughters.
Yeah, well, look at Angelina Jolie when she did Maleficent many years ago. So that's one of the first big backstory films that was made. And there's a scene where she all of a sudden there's a transformation and she elevates herself and she rises up, and it is her rising up and out of the abuse that she had grown up with, that she was paying forward as Maleficent, as the wicked powerful and dark fairy character. And she rose above that, and I loved that scene. My daughter was very young when that came out, so we watched that, and I thought that was really cool because she's Angelina Jolie is an actor, has always talked about what she grew up with, and the reverence that she had, and also wanting to grow up and out of some of the things that she had experienced. And Maleficent was really all about it. I think it was a very personal project. And absolutely, as a parent, it's all we can do to not pay forward some of the things that we were taught by default by the actions of our parent. And so absolutely, and my own kids, I hope that they will take the best of what I can give, and what I didn't do right, I hope they can leave that behind so that every generation has a chance to do a
Yes,
little bit better.
I agree.
And absolutely. And so Pearl, that the Psycho Biddy horror motif kicked in for her, created that character. It is because she embraced it, and then she grew it, and then she became it.
I agree. Now, Maxine, the third movie, it is getting a bigger budget. It is getting a bigger theatrical release, which the first two ones didn't. And it's getting some A-list actors, Kevin Bacon, and I know Kevin Bacon is going to be. There's going to be some other names. I think I even saw that Samuel L. Jackson is going to be in this. I'm not 100% sure, but
Awesome.
there's some
That's
big
huge.
name actors in this movie. Do you think
Yeah, and
that? Okay, I'm gonna tell you what I think. I hope it doesn't take away from the movie. You know what I mean? I think I don't by making now I have a big budget. Now this is a big Hollywood thing. They can bring in whoever they want to. I hope it doesn't take away from the aura of the first two movies.
yeah, well, I think that anytime they're doing sequels, and we've seen it so much these last decades now, is this sequelitis. Everything is a sequel, everything is a continuation. So this is then going to be constructed as a trilogy. I can't wait to see how they tie the two films together. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yes,
But Kevin Bacon, I think, is remarkable because he, as a very popular actor, has never hesitated to dabble in some of the big horror films. You mentioned earlier Friday the
Friday
13th.
13th was his
And then
first.
I think of Tremors, and of course, Stir of Echoes, the Richard Matheson
Yes,
story. I mean, so he's always been part of it. So it's super cool that they're bringing the names. And of course, that should serve retroactively for these previous two films to get everybody watching all three of them. So that'll be a good thing, just so long as, yes, so they can stick, really challenge themselves to have created a fabulous story to bring in as the third part. And so let's hope that they're still on an upward trajectory on that.
correct. So
Yeah.
this one is going to be taking place in the 80s. So from the poster, it seems like it has that 80s theme to it. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
interested to see what that looks like.
Yes. And she's going to pursue now, Maxine's going to pursue her career.
Yes.
So, yeah. And, I kind of wonder, Is she maybe is she a direct descendant from Pearl as
I was
well? And
gonna bring
maybe
that
those
up
things
because
will
they
be
look
revealed.
identical. Because 'cause they're identical.
Yeah. Oh, that is one thing. So if I can say one thing that I wasn't too crazy about, the way that they aged out Mia Goth and whoever was serving in the dual role with her as the old woman, because to my eyes, there was another woman who was also portraying her, especially in the scenes when they were doing joint scenes that they didn't do just the splicing through technology, because I kept being a little bit distracted by how different some of the features were. And then when it was Mia Goth aged out, it didn't look like her at all. I
Yeah,
thought that the aging prosthetics and the makeup was maybe almost a little too heavy, that I could not recognize it as being her. Had I not known through just reading and coming upon it that it was she who did it, I maybe would not have gotten that.
I agree.
Especially when the old woman crawls into the bed with her, it's like that really looks like a
Yeah.
different person entirely. So it's like, aside from it being completely gross, um, and horrific in a very different way,
Yes.
that to me was a little bit distracting visually, because all of the other special effects were so very, very good.
But, so I know, T. West used a lot of practical effects in the 2 movies, which is great. I
Mhm.
wonder if that's because I don't think there was a lot of CGI in that movie. I wonder if he did that because he didn't want it, because, I mean, if you use CGI, it coulda looked so much better, or maybe he couldn't afford it, I don't know, but, like, I agree.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I love special effects, and my youngest, my daughter, and I used to watch Face Off a lot, and that was one of the ways I acclimated her to the visuals of horror. And it was a great way to do it. And you start to understand that prosthetics and makeup styles are very much like somebody's signature, just in the same way that my handwriting might be completely recognizable or yours. I mean, you can even see when people draw, you can recognize a person's hand in that. And so then where makeup and prosthetics and interpretations are, so somebody has a certain style. And so just the way that that particular artist interpreted it, it just didn't jive with what I was probably wanting to see in it. And that I would say, like, if it were a face-off situation, I'd be like, it's a little bit heavy because I do not see the younger person in there at all. And I would have
Mhm.
liked to, because Mia Goth has a really interesting, beautiful face, and she has very different features. So uh, those very unique is a little bit funny way to put it, but her unique features could have been made to show a little bit through, to clue our eyes in a little bit more that this was very much the same face, just in another time.
I agree. Now, do you think something else with X? I wish they kind of would have. I wish there was like a something between Pearl and between X. Like, was this the first time that Pearl and her husband were actually renting out that place to kill people, or was this something they've been doing for decades?
Well, I think the Volkswagen and the dude, the bearded dude hanging in the basement,
Oh yes,
uh,
yes, yes.
that's about that, because I think the husband says to the wife at some point, about some every bohemian that comes here, and so I think she's been kind of toying with people for some time, whoever happens upon that. And then 70s, yeah, you've got the tail end of the 60s, the freestyle living, a little more
Mhm.
nomadic existence, people just exploring the world a little bit. And I don't know where they are exactly. Is this Kansas or what? But, people passing on through. And yeah, they may have made a practice of it, because, of course, that's how they had to feed their pets
And plus,
in the
but
pond.
yeah, and plus back there in the 70s, there was a lot of runaways. Like kids were running away from home a lot, and
Mhm.
they would run away to different cities and states.
Yes, yes, rebellion. You've got the onset of technology showing people the world out there, and people want to be a part of it, and spreading their wings and faltering a lot, and getting out there and getting away. Yeah.
Well, I am absolutely excited for Maxine. I'm looking forward to Maxine. I think it's coming out this spring. I'm definitely going to check it out. And then, Kim, man, I'm going to, of course, have you back on and we're going to talk about Maxine.
That'll be super fun. Yeah, I definitely will be checking it out as well. We'll compare notes.
Now, Kim, man, where can we find you?
I am active on all platforms, Instagram, KA Schultz _writer. I'm also active on Twitter X, and I've got a Facebook writer page. I have a link tree, so those are going to be tucked into my bios. You can get to me through that. My books are available at Amazon and through Ingram as well. And so I will also be participating. I'm so excited at the HorrorCon in Evansville, Indiana, March
Nice.
2 and 3 with my horror writer and podcaster friend, Marie Lestrange. So we're going to be out there doing our thing. And I have a few other things lined up, but that is the next in line. That's what I'm actively preparing for.
That's amazing. Kim, Ann, it's always a pleasure having you on. This was fun.
So much fun. Thank you so much, Travis. This was
No
awesome.
problem. I'm so glad I turned you on to Pearl X. I'm so glad that I convert you like so many others.
Yeah, we got it.
All right, everyone, please check out Kim Ann. She also has some great books out there right now under KA Schultz. So look her up and check her out. Also, too, please hit that like and that subscribe button. I post videos daily. So some great time with indie creators. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Room Live. I'm Travis Bruce. She's Kim Ann Schultz. We'll see you next time. Take care.